some talk. Dr. Zena, are you there?
Yes, I am. And once again, thanks so much to Justice and Beyond for having us for here today. And as I indicated earlier, I'm Dr. Zena Crenshaw Logal, Assistant Chief of Operations for Louisiana United International and Chief of Operations for LUI's latest campaign, America United International. And as Ms. Parker said, it is cold blue. It is time out for what we characterize as a weaponization of America's legal system. So it may be the whole concept of the legal system being weaponized may be hard for some people to imagine. So I'm going to describe it in a variety of ways. What happens is when the legal system is weaponized, it's being used to accomplish an outcome that has almost nothing to do with guilt or innocence, right or wrong, an obligation or a lack of obligation, liability, lack of liability. And I'm going to share with you some examples of that and also give you other examples of the way we characterize what is ultimately a weaponization of the legal system. Many of you are going to be familiar with this concept. Um, it is appropriate, it is a proper function of America's court system to determine whether a person is guilty or innocent of a crime. However, when U.S. criminal law enforcement gets concentrated only in certain geographical areas where crimes may be committed, um, and as to the exclusion of other geographical areas where the same crimes can be committed, the as a result of this, this focusing of criminal law enforcement, certain people of certain race, gender, age tend to get criminally prosecuted, whereas others do not. And those who are prosecuted tend to be of limited means, if not poor. They can't afford a lawyer that has the talent and skill and the time or the resources as the prosecutors. And then the presiding judge tends to be former prosecutors who rule almost invariably against the defendants. That is a form of legal system weaponization. And it is the argument that has been used to suggest why there is an undue representation of males, young black and brown males in the United States mass incarceration. But it actually, weaponization of the legal system can get even worse. America United International is primarily a response to deliberate violations of rights accomplished through U.S. court proceedings, believe it or not. This scenario goes beyond just bias. I mentioned that you have the presiding judge in the criminal court cases where certain demographics, certain segments of our population tend to get prosecuted more readily than other people from other communities, even though you have similar crimes being committed in these other areas. Well, it's a fact that the U.S. Judiciary has an disproportionate representation by people who are former prosecutors, former government employees, former corporate defense attorneys. And what happens is not to suggest that when you have that background, you have some type of you're corrupt, you're deliberately being dishonest, you're deliberately biased. But what it does is your background shapes your perspective, and so you're looking at someone accused of a crime, or you're looking at someone who perhaps is you come from a corporate background, and someone is accused of, rather than being loyal, trying to disclose what they perceive as corporate misconduct. And if you've been in a background where you were always defending against that type of conduct, you are always perceiving that whistleblower or that truth teller as the enemy of your employer, of the corporation, or you are constantly seeing, sometimes the worst of people as a prosecutor. It creates a certain perspective. So you just tend subconsciously at times to perceive what someone would see as understandable behavior that's consistent with innocence. You perceive it as evidence of guilt, a deliberate violation of crime. You lack sympathy. Um, so again, that's a form of weaponization of the legal system. But we're talking about something even worse, when there's a deliberate violation of rights. There's a persistent disregard of rights by agreement. And that phenomena, believe it or not, we come out of a community where people across the country from all walks of life have complained, to the point of that at one point we estimated that there were as much as 1 million people in this country who were directly impacted by these deliberate agreements to disregard our individual rights. And when we talk about the people directly impacted, that is just the people who are involved in the court proceeding. They have their immediate family. And one thing we have been able to determine is that when you, particularly like if you are the children of someone who is the target, they're deliberately having their rights violated. The impact can be devastating because it's all absorbing. And so while you're going through, your high school years, and you're wanting to have your parents attend your sports events, or your recitals, and they're absorbed in just trying to defend life and liberty and property from deliberate violations of rights. We have experienced this in countless situations, and I understand there are going to be people in the audience who are going to attest to living this very nightmare. So what you're talking about is one side or another in a court proceeding has an explicit or an implicit agreement, believe it or not, with the presiding judge to deny one side or the other side a fair and impartial adjudication. So when the agreement, as you can imagine, is explicit, it has been clearly communicated that but between the presiding judge and some powerful litigant, whether it's in the civil context, in the private context, it might be some very influential defense attorney. In the context of criminal prosecution, it may be the prosecutor, and you have a situation where the judge and the prosecutor, the more influential side, has gotten into an express agreement. If you do this, I will do this, and it's a denying the defendant a fair and impartial proceeding. Now that happens, usually there's some form of bribe. That's a very common scenario when you're talking about that deliberate violation of rights. Sometimes though, there's an unspoken understanding, and so that's when we talk about implicit agreement. Um, you know, it doesn't always, everyone doesn't have to come together and decide, that we're going to rule for somebody and against someone else. A lot of times it's an understanding who is the favorite party and who is the disfavored party. If you're up against a big corporation, are you up against a powerful criminal prosecutor, and you are before a judge that's pro prosecutor, are trying to curry favor with some wealthy business interest? A lot of times it doesn't take anybody saying, okay, we're going to rule for this one and we'll rule against that one. The understanding is, the presiding judge can perceive what's going to be in the interest of his or her career, what side is going to uh, you know uh, is going to be something that the local establishment is going to prefer. If you're in a community that's pro-business. It's just going to be an implicit understanding. So by 2015, it was apparent that these agreements were happening all across the country at a staggering rate. It's difficult to actually quantify, how many people were directly impacted. But because we were, we had the benefit of the internet, and people were coming on and talking about their experiences. At the beginning of this century, it was a lot of that. We came out, we had been living in our nightmare since the 90s. A lot of people since about the mid 90s or to the late 90s. And then by the beginning of this year, about the beginning of this century, about in 2002 is when I got online. And there were people who from coast to coast, sometimes we thought it was just happening in small communities, but it made no difference. California, which is a historic, stereotypically progressive state, New York City. So whether you were in a small rural environment or a big city, or whether you were wealthy or whether you were poor, it made no difference. Your religion, your gender, your race, it made no difference what your profession was. It was happening to previously very accomplished lawyers, and they were talking about this experience of having a legal dispute and detecting an agreement between their opponent and the presiding judge, either express or implicit, an understanding, a wink and a nod, to deny you a fair and impartial hearing or adjudication. And again, it has to persist. This is not just, an occasional ruling that, was a close call and you feel like you got the short end of the stick. No, you have to have a situation where it is clear that you're entitled to certain type of considerations under the law. You're entitled to prevail. You're entitled to avoid liability. It has been made clear repeatedly. And in each of these situations, there is a disregard, and you, in fact, the outcome is exactly to the opposite of what the facts and the law suggest you should be entitled to. So in February of 2016, this organization that is now a sister campaign with America United International is called Opt-in USA. And it's really the predecessor of America United International. So in February of 2016, because AUI just launched this year in October, but in February of 2016, Opt-in USA began publicizing this pattern, because you got these agreements, you got what seems to be the influential attorney, the influential party, and the judge are working together, and they're over and over again disregarding not close calls, but what is clearly what you're entitled to. And this is happening constantly across the country. And by 2016, Opt-in USA began it actually started to have a pattern. These agreements that I talked about, they started manifesting in a pattern. Believe it or not, the same one across the country. Can you imagine, from coast to coast, people from all imaginable walks of life, people who were millionaires in business, whether they were poor, whether they were well educated, it made no difference. They were experiencing this deliberate violation of rights. And it was actually a detectable pattern in how the courts were in the opposing party was going around going about accomplishing this miscarriage of justice. So in February of 2016, Opt-in USA began publicizing this pattern and named it the third degree. And I'm going to not go into what the pattern consists of at this point, but I'm going to let Miss Belinda re-interject here. I just have a few more points, and then if we have opportunity, then I'll detail for you what this pattern that happens across the country, a pattern of judicial misconduct. And it was so clear, and it was objectively, it was an objective indication. We were able to identify if this was happening to you, you were a target of this deliberate violation of your rights. And guess what? By October of 2018, Opt-in USA took this information to the United Nations Human Rights Council. And lo and behold, they not only acknowledged that the prospect that rights were being violated in this country, consistent with this pattern that Opt-in USA had identified, the United Nations Human Rights Council determined that the America lacked effective avenues for redressing anyone claiming to be the target of the third degree. Now, I mentioned to you that I was going to describe this weaponization of the legal system in a number of ways. Some people describe it as racketeering, RICO. You may have heard of that. Some of you may be more comfortable with that concept. The notion of the weaponization of the legal system is a concept that people are more comfortable with among the international human rights community. In this country, sometimes people will talk about racketeering. That's a repurposing of our courts. You take with any racketeering that, RICO was created to go after mob activity. And what happens so often with regard to mob corruption, as you know, they can take a legitimate business and they repurpose it to accomplish criminal or illegal objectives. And so there are people who have indicated that that's what happens to our courts. We take our courts, our legal system, and we repurpose it to accomplish illegal objectives, quieting someone who's trying to disclose gross waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, in the corporations, quieting a competitor. This is all the legal system. You're supposed to be coming in there trying to get a dispute resolved, and you find that instead they are trying to silence people who are going to disrupt the money train. Or there's been argued that they're feeding the prison industry with certain segments of the population, people who are least capable of resisting that type of repurposing of the criminal justice system. So racketeering, weaponization, a conspiracy. Everyone is shy about describing something as a conspiracy. But when you talk about people agreeing to reach certain outcomes, that is a conspiracy. In this situation, a conspiracy to violate your rights to a fair and impartial judge, a fair and impartial judicial proceeding. Ms. Belinda talked in terms of the fixes in. And she also talked in terms of organized abuse of the legal system that's facilitated by unchecked judicial misconduct. So I think I may have described about 4 or 5 different ways of describing the same phenomena that Ms. Belinda referenced as the fix being in. And I would imagine that one description or another may resonate with the audience better than others. So I'll be interested to get your feedback. Just a few more points, Ms. Belinda, and then I'll let you jump in. And again, I have not detailed the pattern of the third degree. I want to have an opportunity to do that, but I just want to get these basic principles introduced, and then I can come back with that detail, because sometimes we can always provide the detail later, but I wanted to make sure that we at least talk about these general concepts. What I want to everyone to understand, and then I'll be quiet, that the third degree, as you can imagine from my description of it, the deliberate violation of your rights by agreement, it involves a number of human rights violations. And I anticipate that this audience knows a lot about human rights and our basic entitlement to a fair and impartial trial, a right, as Ms. Belinda talked about, to be considered innocent until proven guilty. Those are just basic human rights. They are inherent to being a human. It doesn't take a legislator, it doesn't take a court to make those decisions. If you're a human, these are the rights that are inalienable, supposedly. Well, when you are in court proceedings where you have the judge and the more powerful presiding opposing party, and the fix is in, they're pursuing an improper outcome that has almost nothing to do with guilt or innocence or whether you're responsible. These are classic human rights violations who that are being accomplished by this cabal, the ring between the lawyers and the judges. What AUI is seeking enforcement of America's international covenant on civil and political rights that requires effective avenues of redress for violations of human rights under color of law. And that's exactly what you have when the court system is being used to railroad people to prison, to silence um, government critics, to silence people who are trying to expose major waste, fraud, and abuse, either in our government or in our corporations. And they're using the court to accomplish this. They have the complicity of the presiding judge. That is, you know, you're supposed to have effective avenues of redress. But what we have found and what we began explaining to the United Nations, even as late as 2010, is it's basically a shell game. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're a sophisticated advocate, whether you're, Perry Mason, Abraham Lincoln, all of them could be representing you. And when these rogue agents of government align against you to violate your rights, there's just absolutely no guarantee that your rights will be protected. And it made no difference where you went. You went to judicial disciplinary agencies. You went to local law enforcement. You went to the Department of Justice. You went to your state legislators. You went to members of Congress for their judicial oversight. And each time what happened was it was a deaf ear, or they send you somewhere else. We'll go and appeal. And I've literally and I've personally been a part of going multiple times as far as the U.S. Supreme Court, lobbying on Capitol Hill, reaching out to legislators. And it's a bit dated, but it still holds true. In 2014, I believe it was the University of Syracuse that confirmed that when you are alleging this type of collusion, that's another way of describing it. It was nearly 100% of the time, 99%, 98%, the FBI will refuse to investigate. And guess what? At the Department of Justice, which has historically been known where you can go for protection, even if locally they were disregarding your rights, nearly 100% of the time, the Department of Justice will refuse to prosecute, even when the FBI recommended prosecution. If it involved a prosecutor and certainly if it involved a judge, nearly 100% of the time, there was a refusal to prosecute. And then we've been able to confirm through various social science research, when you making complaints to the judicial review boards, whatever they may be called in your various states, nearly 100% of the time, they were declining investigation. No, again, no matter what you presented, who presented it, nearly 100% of the time, there was no positive. There was a determination that there was no misconduct. Now, what's significant about the UN Human Rights Council determining that there was a lack of effective redress. When we went to them with this evidence that, you know, nearly 100% of the time you just got a rejection or you got silence, or another thing the legislators would do is, well, this is the course, we don't have, you know, jurisdiction over this. This is a court matter. That would happen. Even though you're talking about major government misconduct, Congress has jurisdiction to consider government corruption. And then the judiciary committees have a jurisdiction to look at the performance of our judiciary. It was like just a runaround, and it was just a shell game. And one of the ways that we were able to convince the UN Human Rights Council to agree with us is we showed that what had happened over the last few decades is they had tinkered with our legal system in such a way that it could be selectively enforced. So you have prosecutors, they have total discretion over whether they are going to investigate, whether they're going to prosecute or not. So, you know, you could go there with video evidence. It made no difference how compelling, because the prosecutor has discretion. They can, you know, won't even return your phone call. But at the same time, I think it was last year, a homeless gentleman got sentenced. This is actual facts. 10 years because he stole I think it was food or some underwear out of a store, something along the lines of the Dollar Tree. And probably because he was an habitual offender, he literally got sentenced 10 years in prison. So this type of draconian criminal law enforcement, average Americans are experiencing. But if you contact a prosecutor and say that your wealthy aunt who has been strangers came in and through false statements got in place a guardianship over her, and now they're not allowing any family members to have access to her, and they're in the process of depleting the $2 million that she worked her whole life to accumulate. And you have evidence that the expenditures are wasteful, they're not authorized. You have this information. In other words, you're trying to go after lawyers and judges who are approving this, and you're lucky to get a return phone call. But in the meantime, they're filling up the prison with people who are stealing underwear to survive, stealing food to survive, allegedly. And there are countless other examples of the inequity. Basically, what happens is, at one point, it was all of law enforcement, starting with the cop on the street to the judge on the bench. There has been so much public outcry that now it's still rare, but they may throw under the bus a law enforcement officer. If it just get if the tape gets leaked, and certainly you all in Louisiana, we can talk about, the leaking of the tapes and showing this blatant criminal activity on the part of Louisiana law enforcement. At some point, they may say, okay, we'll let this officer get prosecuted, and if they actually get convicted, then okay, the system supposedly worked. But some of the most insulated from accountability, even investigation, that any of us can be subjected to, and sometimes just being investigated is devastating to your life. But some of the most insulated people from investigation, let alone prosecution and conviction, are influential lawyers and that group of Americans who we call judges. So imagine, it is the job of the judiciary to make decisions about our life, liberty, and property. That is the way it was designed to operate. But when you have, no matter what the evidence is, that they have done so unethically, that they have deliberately violated your rights, in this country, even the United Nations has determined that you are not going to get a prompt, at least not often enough, a prompt, a fair, an affordable consideration of your allegation. So again, the third degree, the deliberate violations of your rights, that involves a number of human rights violations. However, AUI is trying to get enforced the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. That's a treaty that obliges the United States to give us effective avenues of relief so that we can quickly, in an affordable manner, get a fair and impartial consideration of our evidence that this collusion, this weaponization actually happened. Ms. Belinda talked about we need a FEMA, and we can talk about that in more detail. But
Okay.
the last point is bystanding to the third degree and America's ineffective remedies. Bystanding to that is a crime against humanity, and that's what AUI has brought to the table for our current presidential administration, because the Biden administration, even after UN Human Rights Council has acknowledged this deficiency, even after the Trump administration acknowledged that United States does not have effective avenues of redress when you're making these allegations, the Biden administration has been fully informed and still remains silent. And there, in the meantime, as Ms. Belinda said, we're steady having to report to prison, surrender our children to child protective services. Therein lies the problem. Ms. Belinda, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's great, Dr. Zena. Awesome, awesome. I just want to say that the AUI campaign, America United International, this campaign is for all of us. And it capitalizes on the historical UN support that Dr. Zena Crenshaw led. So this is good news to all of us. And that's why it's so important that we understand why we are at this point and we're saying cold blue. So what I would like to do is give my other presenters at least 3 to 5 minutes, Dr. Manning, if the time permit, just to come on, introduce themselves and give us a brief explanation of what happened to them.
Dr. Tate is here, Ms. Parker.
Okay, yes, let's have Dr. Tate. No, let's go to Dr. Cheeks. Is she with us?
Dr. Cheeks is still, she wasn't able to get away. She's at an international pain conference, and unfortunately she represents Doctors of Courage, but she was not able to join us this evening.
Okay, I certainly understand. I got that message. Okay, I knew she would try her best. So Dr. Tate is with us, and if you unmute yourself, Dr. Tate, come on in, and then we're gonna wrap it up, Pastor Manning, with any questions or concerns that anyone may have.
All right, if we could plan to move to questions at no later than 6:10, that would be great.
Okay, great, we're good. All right then, Dr. Tate, unmute yourself and come on in.
Greetings, Halito. I'm here. How are you?
Okay, great.
I'm here.
Yeah, why don't you come on in, Dr. Tate, and go ahead and, share with the audience tonight. I know that it's been a lot going on and we've been trying to, get our presenters. We also have Mr. Carl Cavalier, and I was hoping he'd text me if he just wanted to come in for 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes just to explain the importance of AUI to this audience.
Greetings, Halito. My name is Dr. Monique Tate. I'm Principal Chiefess of Coosa Nation of North America. And I had the pleasure of being united with AUI through a common interest of a client that we're working with in the Louisiana area, specifically dealing with human rights issues and violations of a family being torn apart in a courtroom and not having redress. So being introduced to AUI is right on time for us because we work with clients, families, and kinship across the United States. We are Indigenous Americans, we're American Aborigines, and it is continuing to be a very uphill battle to find remedy. And the two key things that AUI that stood out for me, and what attracted me to definitely want to work with this organization is one, we know firsthand what the weaponization of the United States legal system looks like on the ground level, even from starting before they even get to the court, actually dealing with institutions like a Department of Children and Family Services or any other social services, and how sometimes a lot of our people are actually funneled into the court system just seeking help or not getting the proper help that they need. The second thing is not having a remedy. And we can just, for one case in particular that we are working, we actually got it all the way through to the admissibility stage at the OAS, which is the Organization of American States, at the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. And we got it all the way through to admissibility stage. And I can tell you that we started with this case with this family in 2019. Their children had been taken in the end of 2018. We managed to get one back out of foster care. We're still working to get two returned, and we're talking about 3 years later. But that long list of agencies that Dr. Z had mentioned, that is accurate and on point. We went through the Justice Department, we went through the FBI, we went through congressmen and women, representatives, we went through human rights, we went through Office of Inspector General, we went through the Attorney General, we went to the governor's office, we went through all of these agencies seeking remedy for obvious human rights and constitutional violations that we had proof positive. And it was just either straight out benign neglect where there was no answer, or the answer was see so-and-so, or we're aware of the problem, or we don't have jurisdiction. That's another big thing that comes up in some of the responses from some of the agencies. We don't have jurisdiction. So my question is, what do you have jurisdiction to do? So we did get an answer back from the United States State Department. And it was very interesting that they actually kind of made fun of the fact that we went through all these agencies. In other words, they said, we did not exhaust remedies. Well, if we're being blocked out of courts, the young lady was, we were her Indigenous human rights advocate, and she did do a pro se appeal of her case. They held her case for 120 days, did not send it up to the Supreme Court, and they kept holding on to it, and she never got all of the transcripts that she had asked for and requested as a pro se litigant. She never got all the audios, and they withheld her appeal for 120 days and never gave her all the information. So that's literally blocking you out of the actual due process rights that you have to seek a higher court if you feel like a lower court has erred in their judgment. So we went to the Justice Department, who sent letters back and forth to us for almost a year, but never did anything. It's not in our purview. We sent it to the FBI, and that collusion between agencies, that's real. Because, you know, we were told on paper, well, we sent your case to the FBI. But when we contacted the FBI, they had no knowledge. I'm sorry, I have to step out. There's no knowledge of the case. And so when we brought that to their attention, they just said that they didn't know. So that's what we mean, that this is real, it's live. And that's just one case out of many. We have a case in Alaska, we have Louisiana, we've had land cases in Tennessee, in the state of Georgia. We're pretty much across the country. Virginia, we're now trying to help get a brother out of jail who's been sitting in jail for almost 2 years for nothing. We had to put in a habeas corpus for that. We're in North Carolina right now. So we are addressing the issues of weaponization of the courts in a really live way, and it's real. So I am very thankful to be invited to come just to share really a microcosm of what is happening out here on a very large scale. So it is time for human rights to actually be at the forefront. The United States is the #1 incarcerator on the planet, and it didn't happen overnight. It's systematic. And one of the proponents of that is what keeps the United States at the top, that outranks everybody on the planet in incarceration, is the fact because its own justice system is weaponized against people, its own people. So
Absolutely.
that's real. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. I also would like to
Thank you.
mention that Dr. Tate is also an ambassador for AUI. Right away, I mean, it was very clear to her that AUI is for all the people and the timing is cold blue. So on that note, what I would like to do is invite, let's see, Mr. Carl Cavalier. Are you still with us, Carl? Can you unmute yourself? You know, I
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
say before he come in is that, you know, because of this type of weaponization, when you are on the right side and doing the right thing, you can be attacked by the very system that you're there, you know, to do your job, first of all, but you also there to protect the rights of the people. So Carl, come on in and just share. You got 3 minutes, Carl.
Yes,
3 to
ma'am.
5 minutes, because we want to try to go into Q&A within the next 5 minutes. So go right ahead,
Yes, ma'am.
take.
Yes, ma'am. I thank you. So thank everyone for giving me an opportunity, but I appreciate the information I'm receiving tonight. Prior to now, never heard of AUI, but I'll dive right off in it and give a little synopsis of my situation as a young Black law enforcement officer who's speaking out about the wrongdoing within the department I'm employed with. I'm feeling the pressure, and I'm living the situation right now. You know, and not having a blueprint or how-to manual to channel these situations I'm going through is very stressful. You know, stressful on myself, my family. Just hearing Dr. Zena talk about the third degree is very intriguing to me, but also, you know, I cast doubt upon the future court proceedings that I may have to go through because of my situation. But I am hopeful, and I am motivated, and I am I want to be a champion of change. So um, I'm gonna do.
Everyone, if you would please mute your phones. If that's not Mr. Cavalier's phone, if you take the opportunity.
Ms. Gilmore, can you mute yourself?
I thought it was muted. Let's see. I must have knocked it off. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Gilmore. Mr. Cavalier, go ahead and continue.
Yes, sir. So no problem. As I was saying, just going through the situation as a young Black officer and as a young Black male in America, I'm feeling a compound amount of pressure upon myself and my family to go through this situation. But if I had to do it all over again, I'll do it in a heartbeat, to stand up and talk about the things that I see, what's going on around the department. Just hearing the things tonight that Ms. Zena presented tonight shows me that I lack a lot of knowledge about the court systems and how they operate, how they're supposed to operate, and how they may operate unofficially. And I would like to learn more about that, especially since I'm going through the situation. I think that's pretty much it. I'm just grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to hear and receive this information, and hopefully I can be a part of this change that we see.
Absolutely. Thank you, Officer Carl. You know, I also wanted to talk about his book. I'm gonna put all the information, if you can, Mr. Cavalier, could you put your information on how they can contact your book? This young man wrote a book, and you know, did you want to tell us a little bit about that before you go? We got 1 minute.
Okay, yes. So my book, the title of the book is NWB. Just documenting my process going through my law enforcement career. I started at a local agency and moved my way up to the state agency, and just wrote a book based on true events of what happened in my career. I got fictional characters in it, has a storyline. So I don't know, just a way of documenting and expressing the the things I feel when I go through patrolling neighborhoods, having to arrest people who look like me, people who don't look like me, being called the N-word for arresting, you know, a few white people I arrested, you know, called me N-word, N-word with a badge. So that's where the title of the book comes from. It's a very interesting read, if you ask me, and it's therapeutic for me to write it. So nwbbook.com is where you can find it. And here's a look at the cover of the book.
Mm. Wow. And I just want to say that, it's a very good book. And when you talk about revealing the things that take place behind the badge, and like he said, he's living that now. So thank you so much, Carl, for taking out the time of your busy schedule, to present here with us tonight. And hopefully that we can not just educate you, but the entire public on how serious when we're saying that there is no adequate redress, that we don't have nowhere to turn. And that's the reason why I want to bring Dr. Zena back in. And we want to say that at this point in time, we have declared that we're going to, as this campaign has taken off and have really taken some real serious legs, we're excited about the traction that we have made thus far. And that, when we're saying that we are declaring our rights to self-defense by changing the terms of government, Dr. Z, why don't you come in and talk about our most recent development and calling for or requesting that the President Biden, administration be investigated due to the fact that these are international. These are, crimes against the citizens. We are actually being attacked by our own government, and we don't have nowhere else to turn. This is serious.
Yes, and if there's questions coming in, Reverend Mandy, I'm not sure if you're going to get them through the chat, but feel free to pose those. It is very important that America United International, that everyone understand that what is unique about this campaign is that we have escalated our challenge of this corruption to another level. And we are inspired by the Declaration of Independence, which is the instrument on which that formed the basis of the creation of the United States of America. And it probably has been a long time, perhaps since any of us have read it. But if you look at it, the signatories to that document talk in terms of when your government becomes tyrannical, when it unduly is undue threat to the citizens' life, liberty, and property. It is your obligation. It is your right. It is an inherent right to self-defend. So we've had the United Nations say that it is not manifestly ill-founded, that the United States has a policy of impunity, not doing anything about the role of its judges in persistent abuse of the legal system. And this is used to literally persecute people. But in the meantime, so the UN Human Rights Council made that determination. The Trump administration acknowledged that there was ineffective redress. They just took the position that they had other priorities. And so in June, we brought this to President Biden's attention and says, that's no excuse. We are all American citizens. You can't take the position that there are certain segments of people who have effective redress and the other ones we don't have time for you all. That's unconstitutional. And he has not even acknowledged the correspondence which went to the Justice Department and the State Department. So in the meantime, people are being told to surrender themselves to prison. People are facing persecution. So at this point, America United International represents our declaration of independence from the tyranny of this weaponization of the legal system. And we have asked that the International Criminal Court investigate President Biden as to why he is allowing this situation to go unaddressed.
All right.
Absolutely, and remain silent. You know, and this is the last words, Pastor Manning, and then you can come in and we can address any other questions and we can wrap this up for tonight. But, you know, I just want to make it clear that, you know, we see these type of things happening all over the country where people are spending decades in prison, you know, 30, 40, 50 years before they find out they never should have been there in the first place. We see this type of thing coming forth. We've seen it here in the state of Louisiana, where we went all the way up to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, with Ramos versus Louisiana. And it was determined that what they did here in Louisiana was unconstitutional, if not criminal, with this racist, unconstitutional Jim Crow law, where they were putting people in prison with a non-unanimous jury verdict. So we got people right now that are set in prison that really should not be. Michael,
Sister Belinda, hold on just a second.
Yes,
Sister Belinda, hold on. I
When I
need
talk
for,
to the guy that's working,
I
he
need
asked
for
me
you to mute your
what type of
phone,
car I
please.
told him.
That phone that we're hearing right now. Go ahead and mute your phone. I believe that's
I think
Mr.
that's
Michael.
you know, I think it's down there.
Please go ahead and mute your
Fast
phone.
25 miles an hour. He
Thank
says,
you. That's all right.
he
Thank you.
says, man, those cars
Can you hear
are
me?
set up where it burns
Bro,
off
can you mute that
that
phone?
carbon that clocks up.
I'm trying to find who it is.
this ain't nothing but the enemy. Brooke, could you mute his phone, please? Because
I'm trying.
got a
I
different
can't
problem.
find the person.
It might be
okay, it's Michael Bassey.
Oh, no. Let's stick
But
with the
he has no
camera.
camera on, so it's hard.
Can you knock him off?
Yeah.
Oh,
Mr. Michael, can you hear
Baptiste, can you
Mr.
mute your
Michael? Can
phone?
you, Mr. Michael, can you hear me, sir?
He's not a mechanic, right?
Uh,
But he's been touring for.
let's see.
If you look under participants,
I've been looking under participants and I finally
You got
came
him,
up.
somebody got him, or he did it
Baptiste.
himself. You're Mr.
No,
Rude, Mr. Michael Baptiste.
Yeah, but that's how the enemy does us. Robert, I'm pretty sure you can edit that out. But
I can handle that.
I hope that I made it clear that, you know, here in Louisiana, you know, we went all the way up to the Supreme Court and we still have people, you know, sitting in prison that really should not be there. Right now, they're being held hostage, you know, even after the convictions were vacated, you know, by the United States Supreme Court. And we don't have, you know, no adequate redress for these people. A lot of them, they're saying it's double jeopardy to retry them, that, you know, the law was unconstitutional. So we're calling for the Biden administration to not stand by silently and just let these type of atrocities continue on. So thank you, Pastor Manning. Thank you, Justice and Beyond. And now, you know, I'm gonna hand it back over to you, Pastor Manning, for any other questions or concerns. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, now we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good, very good. All right, let me see. Sylvia, does anybody have any questions?
They had some comments, but it wasn't any questions.
All right, all
That
right.
I've
Let me just ask you. You may not have put them in the chat. This conversation that is extremely important, and I very much appreciate each and every speaker, especially the courage of Officer Cavalier telling his story. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. But I do want to ask at this time again, if anyone has any questions, to please, you can address those at this time.
And
Yes,
Pastor,
ma'am. I have a question. Hi, Miss Belinda. I was trying to understand more what y'all was saying. I was cut off for a point, but I need to know more about it. And I want to also connect you with my cousin, John Epstein, he just came home and was freed last year after doing 20 years in Angola. He was given 150 years in Jefferson Parish just off of hearsay. He was not caught with the drugs or nothing, but he fought, he educated himself, and he started helping to write writs, rewrite the writs that was helping to free a lot of people before he had gotten free. But last year, no, in 2019, on his mama's birthday in March, he was free. He have a podcast. I need to connect with you more so y'all can talk, because I know it was a woman out of California that really helped him as well. So, I mean, connection is what we need, though.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. And I appreciate that. And that's, we put the link, the website for everyone to go to America United International and read about us, that you are going to find the other links on there that Dr. Zena talked about, the Opt-in USA. I really, I want to make this clear, and with closing, Pastor Manning, if you allow me to, I'm pretty sure we're getting close to that time. It's so important right now that everyone understand what it is we need to do. Like Dr. Zena said, we can go all the way up the ladder to the highest court in the land, the United States Supreme Court. Don't misunderstand us when we talk about when the fix is in. I'm talking about your judge sleeping with your lawyer. I'm talking about your insurance company. It's the one that is the paying all the campaign money to the judge, and you have a lawsuit against that insurance company, but he have received all of his campaign funds. That's how the judge got the seat in the first place. I'm talking about when the fix is in, people, that you don't have no adequate redress. There's nowhere else to turn. I don't care. You can file, like Dr. Zena said, you can have Johnny Cochran as your lawyer. You can have Abraham Lincoln. You can have Perry Mason. It don't matter. The fix is in. And your insurance company is if you look at some of these multi-trillion-dollar insurance companies, they're the ones who back the district attorneys that run for office, the judges that run for office, so I mean, we have some horrible stories about how you can be kicked under the bus by your own lawyer that you done paid $2 million to get your kids back. But because the judge and the lawyer is in cahoots, they on the golf court together and whatnot, the fix is in. You're going to lose. So this is the problem. We're saying right now, with cold blue, we got to stop this. People's lives are being destroyed. We just had a doctor to report to prison on November 10th, and we know for a fact that her judge just received a promotion to the Dr. Zeta, was it to the Ninth Circuit Court?
She's a candidate for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Yes.
The various Court of Appeals that found no wrongdoing in her case.
Yes. And this is, I'm gonna tell you, this is sickening. It is so disturbing that we have to sit back and receive this type of tyranny. And I'm saying it's treason upon our own citizens in the United States of America, and it has to stop. And our president is we are addressing him, that we're saying that he cannot stand silently by and blatantly disregard us when these type of atrocities are taking place. So thank you so much, Justice and Beyond. Thank you, Pastor Manning, and you can go right ahead and close us out.
Thank you so much. Thank you to each and every one of you for your presentations. That was extraordinary, and absolutely indeed, we have to pull back the veil and expose exactly what is happening by truth telling. And take back our power, because the system's doing exactly what it was designed to do, which is to keep us in bondage. But we have to expose it and demand that there be justice. Thank you for that. Unfortunately, we have to come to a close at this time. But again,
Can I say something, Pastor, before you close?
Yes.
Because my question wasn't just to connect her with my cousin, but my take is This is the action time. What are you asking for us? That's what I want. I don't want to hear the anger. I want to hear what's our next step from here. Give it to us. You know, you gave us a presentation. Now tell us what's the action you asking.
Absolutely. Dr. Zena, why don't you go right ahead and give that information so that we can get every single person.
Thank you, Pastor Manning. I'm sorry.
No, that
We
was
ha-
good, Sylvia. Thank you.
I was hoping we had time to do that, Sylvia. Thank you so much.
We
Go
got to
ahead,
make
Dr.
time.
The reason why we've been asking everyone to go to the website because it sets out the 4 basic strategies that we're pursuing. We you know, we are asking for investigation of the president. We're trying to carve out some relief before the U.S. Supreme Court. We want people to join us with lobbying Congress. We also want to have direct action, protests, and rallies. We're concentrating a lot of our efforts in the state of Indiana because it's ground zero for, you know, this with the 3rd degree. All of this started in the state of Indiana. So we're since what's his name, Vice President Pence wants to keep himself in the public spotlight, we're going to capitalize on that and ask him to come in and take a stand on this, which he has not done as the governor or as vice president, even though he was in both of those positions during relevant time. And then one of our big areas of concentration is on the targeting of United States medical profession. So that's one of the groups, special interest groups that we've teamed up with. So lobbying, direct action, putting pressure on the state of Indiana. We're working closely with the Doctors of Courage, but we're also expanding, and we're going to be working with other special interest groups, people who are looking at the injustice in the criminal justice system, the probate community, and all of that happens. You know, you connect with us through the website.
Absolutely. And I would like to also be able to tomorrow, hopefully we can come to the Pillars meeting and request that Justice and Beyond become a ambassador in this to bring about the effective advocacy and the sustainability with this campaign, because we're not backing up. I'm telling you, we are very serious. We were going to remain very vigilant to pursue that. We will not stand idly by and be silent and watch this type of tyranny upon the United States citizens here in America. So that's the importance of this. And I believe that all heaven is backing us up, that God is with us, because we are moving. We started off with over 2,000. Now we're up to 3 million people that are responding to this campaign. So we're excited about it.
All right, very good. We're with you. We're with you. You have our full support. We know that you continue to keep us informed as to how we can participate in the upcoming actions, and that you'll, as a pillar, you'll continue to show up and let us know how we can get on the battlefield with you in this issue. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and begin to wrap this up for this evening. Let me ask if there are any candidates that are going to be in the runoff, as those of you who are may be joining us outside of New Orleans may not be aware that we just had an election on Saturday, and some of our candidates will be going to a runoff on December the 11th. And so want to ask if there's anyone on the call that will be participating in the runoff. All right, not hearing anything. I do want to just say a word. We had very low, absolutely horrendous numbers and percentages in terms of turnout. And the runoff is always to be expected that there'll be even lower turnout. We've got to do our work in making sure that we overcome this apathy and this feeling that we're powerless. We have a system, and we have to participate in the system that we have. And so I encourage each and every one of you to help people to get to the polls, encourage them to go out and vote. Do want to say on behalf of Justice and Beyond that we're happy for those who took the courage to get out there and to run for election, and run for an office, particularly thinking of Nooneyman Belden Baptiste, who got 6% of the vote in the mayor's race. We just commend him on the fact that he was bold enough to go out and to stand firm, and to just be a great candidate in that. Very much respect to him for being bold in his passion and his commitment in doing that. As we close tonight, want to know if there are any announcements that anybody has of any upcoming actions that we need to know about and participate in. Anyone at this time? All right, not hearing any. Let's go ahead and conclude with a word of prayer on tonight as we go our separate ways, asking that God would watch over us and protect us and use us to fight for justice and equity. Sister Belinda, would you close us in prayer?
Yes, Pastor, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Gracious Father, we come before you on tonight, just thanking you and praising your most holy name. Father, we thank you that the minds are clear, that the peace of God reign in each and every one of us, and that we will continue to pursue justice no matter what the cost, because we know, Father, that you are with us. We're on the right side, and that is the Lord's side, and we cannot lose. We are winning. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank God.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Amen.
Thank you,
We
everyone.
will see you again on next week at 5 o'clock. We will be having, the 22nd is next week, and we will not meet on the 22nd in observance for a Thanksgiving holiday and week. Will not meet on the 22nd. We'll meet again on the 29th of November for a runoff candidate forum. And so thank you all. God bless you. Be safe.
Happy
Thanksgiving,
holidays,
everybody.
everybody.
Happy holiday, happy Thanksgiving,
Happy
everyone.
belated birthday to
Pastor
Sylvia
Manning,
McKenzie.
With that, Pastor Manning, we're not having a pillars meeting tomorrow?
We will have a pillars meeting tomorrow. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
I'm going to try my best to make that. If not, I will have my representatives there. Thank you
Very
so
good.
much.
Happy belated
Amen.
birthday to Sylvia McKenzie, too.
Thank
right,
you,
happy
baby. It was
birthday,
a blast.
All right.
Y'all have a good
Good night,
evening.
everybody.
God bless everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.
Good
Thank you.
night.
So everyone knows.
There we go.